first? I hope so. Great message, great trip. Was actually along with you there on that journey, so we appreciate that, and how you tied it into the Lord's direction in our lives. So thank you for that effort, and we'll look forward to the next trip or whatever. We are going to set the sacrament table. Can we queue up something for that? Sure. Whatever you want to pick there. Give us a moment. We're going to queue up the song. For
Does someone have a desire for a song?
Anybody got it? Thought? We'll let you pick it.
We have the green books in it. Is that nice?
Oh,
We'll
sure.
put it up there.
You can, yeah, just let me know whatever you want to sing, and let me know if I can put it on here. If not, they got
199, My Redeemer.
Oh, apparently she's singing, but
Okay.
he's got to speak.
That's a
Give
hard
a break.
I don't have my glasses and that's hard.
Come on.
Is it 4 verses in there?
yeah. Oh, why it's doing this. I will sing of my Redeemer and his wondrous love to me. On the cruel cross he suffered, from the curse to set me free. Sing, oh, sing of my Redeemer. With his blood he purchased me. On the cross he sealed my pardon. Paid the debt and made me free. I will tell a wondrous story, how my lost estate to save. In his boundless love and mercy, he the ransom freely gave. Sing, oh, sing of my Redeemer. With his blood he purchased me. On the cross he sealed my pardon. Paid the debt and made me free. Will praise my dear Redeemer, his triumphant power I'll tell, while the victory given over sin and death and hell. Sing, oh, sing of my Redeemer. With his blood he purchased me. On the cross he sealed my pardon. Paid the debt and made me free. I will sing of my Redeemer and his heavenly love to me. He from death brought me, Son of God, with him to be. Sing, oh, sing of my Redeemer. With his blood he purchased me. On the cross he sealed my pardon. Paid the debt and made me free.
Well, it's good to see everyone. Welcome, Stephanie. I hope you're hanging in there. Kind of have a run going there of calamity, so we're praying for you.
Oh, no.
A lot of struggles, and I know the family's feeling under the weather, but we'll lift you up and send our good thoughts and wishes and prayers today.
Yeah.
It's good to see everyone. And I was enjoying very much the messages that Sister Doreen has prepared for us over the past series that she did, and how she tied it all together so neatly. One of the things that stuck out to me today as she was covering today's portion was that we can become lost in our thoughts and ambitions for tomorrow, so much so that we sort of lose sight of our accountability for the things of today. And that's a sign that we have maybe some of the wrong ambitions, or maybe they've just become priority, when the priority really needs to be here and now, living according to the morality, the standards of righteousness that the Lord has laid out. And if we do that, we find a fulfillment in that will supersede the enjoyment of what we thought might be a worthy pursuit. It's like that parable, and maybe Walt he hasn't already covered this in his parables lessons, but the man who built bigger stables because he wanted more room to store even more success in grain and livestock perhaps than what he already had. And it's like, look, you already have what you need for the flesh. You could have spent that time thinking about your accountability to the Lord today, spiritually. And so, we need to remember that. And I'm so excited about this season. And I think Thanksgiving is certainly on our minds as we kick off sort of more of the holiday season. And Thanksgiving is a unique holiday, isn't it? Because it kind of makes you think about gratitude. And I always find it kind of interesting for that reason. And, I was in the garage yesterday trying to build some gifts. I do some woodworking on the side, and my thought was to build these wooden trays. And so I kind of laid together some wood for the bottom, and then I started building the sides. And along the way, I'm kind of like this person who doesn't plan ahead and follow a blueprint. I'm kind of designing as I go. And I don't know if you live that way in your life, but there's some ups and downs to that approach, I'll tell you. And as I was adding the sides to the tray, I thought, it'd be really cool and fancy if I flared them out, right, instead of straight up. And then I started thinking, well, how would I do that? I would need to cut an angle on the edge of the wood so it would stand out. Well, I can figure that out. So I tested it on some test wood. And then I'm like, well, how am I going to join the corners? Because I had already committed to this fancy design of like 45-degree angles so that they meet like this instead of overlapping. The problem is when you flare it, it ruins the corner angle and the length. And so I started having to recalculate the design. The long story short here is that I have a greater appreciation for a tray than I had before when I started. And, simple things like that. You don't know what goes into making the things that you enjoy and take for granted every day. And that's really, I think, sometimes how life is, and how Thanksgiving can play a part in helping you maybe appreciate more what it is that you have. And, there's a lot to be said for being a grateful person. And sometimes we're not naturally grateful, are we? And I think this is sort of one of those areas in life where you kind of need a balanced message, because it's not all just about being grateful. Because we can conflate gratitude with complacency, right? If I'm so thankful for everything I have and there's no need to do anything more, well, that's maybe going off too far, to the extreme, right? And so we're left with this challenge. Well, I want to be grateful. I certainly don't want to be ungrateful, but I also want to push myself to grow as a person, to grow in my relationships, to be more happy in my life. And so it's kind of like this. You want to be able to somehow do both and have a thankfulness for what you have, but also have a thankfulness for what you will have as you continue on to move forward in your life. And we all know what it feels like to get stuck in life, and we don't want that. So we want sort of a mix of drive and gratitude in our lives. And I think that the way you do that is unlike the guy who built the bigger stables, you have to kind of step away from what you're doing sometimes. And this is such a challenge in life. It's a level that you're at. It's kind of like in photography, you focus in on something. And that's the project of the day, whatever it is that in your particular phase of life that you happen to be in right now, that's what you're focused on. And so you step up close to it. I have to get into there and sand the wood and glue and do all these things to get that tray finished. I can't be sitting there while I'm working on a tray, especially while handling a saw, with my mind somewhere else. But when I'm done with the tray, I'm done. I need to step back now and reevaluate in my life. What's next? And so perhaps the way that we can manage this tricky balance between drive and gratitude is to zoom out and to look at the bigger picture. And I think that's the problem we face in life, that we often lose sight of the bigger picture because we're so focused on the mini projects of life that we forget how they all tie together and that they culminate in a master plan. And Doreen was telling us this morning what the master plan is. And when she shared that verse about, you'll see when you get here, what a powerful idea that is. Because sometimes I lose sight of the big picture because I don't understand what it is. And I often think, well, what is heaven really all about? What are we going to do up there? What's it going to be like? I've got questions about that. And I have to faithfully trust in that, well, the Lord put this life and world together, and it's pretty amazing. And when Doreen reads us a verse that says, eye hath not seen, and ear hath not heard, we haven't even been able to consider and imagine the concepts of the greatness of our heavenly reward. That's telling us something. That yes, you don't know what it is, but it's so good. And you can't even wrap your earthly mind around it because it's above the natural. It's above the flesh. It's above our capacity to comprehend it in the current state that we're in. And that's actually scriptural. I'm not just making this up. There are scriptures that actually say that the Lord withheld spiritual revelations because the natural frame and body couldn't contain them. And so while I cannot take credit for the greatness of this home and earth we live in, it's wonderful and I enjoy it. And I have to trust the same God who made this grandeur that we get to live in the flesh is true to his word when he says, I've made something even better for you when your soul goes on to the next place. I think about little things like snow. And, it seems like we're not going to have snow in Zion. And I'm kind of upset about that. I like snow. But, again, what will be there that will outshine what we're enjoying today? And will I be willing to part with that which I have to receive something greater? That's a deep question for us today. So sometimes what we need to do is step back, reevaluate, realign, and make sure that our plan is leading somewhere good. You know, I can look down when I'm hiking and make sure my feet aren't gonna lead me off the edge of a cliff. But once in a while, I've got to stop walking and look at the view, the reason I came out there in the first place, and take stock and say, well, yeah, that's where I want to go. There's my destination. And I want to reconfirm that what I'm doing in my life is going to get me there. So I wanted to just share a couple of scriptures here. And again, our goal here is kind of seeing the way to a more thankful heart. And not confusing that with complacency, but understanding that while I'm thankful for what I have, I'm also thankful for the ability to push myself to get more and to progress in my life. We have to always be progressing. That's the way God designed it. And he set a stopwatch on it. And he said, you have limited time, okay? This body won't last you forever. And then you'll separate from it, spirit and soul. And then the day will come when I'll bring you back together again with a perfected body in the resurrection. Mind-blowing. But this is what he says. That's the plan. And so if we can do both, if we can somehow swing this and say, I'm going to be content to some extent with what I have, but also content in the continual growth of my life, then I will find I have a grateful heart. And you want that. In fact, the very thing that you might say causes you not to be grateful because I don't have yet what I want is perhaps the thing that should be making us grateful because you know you're on the road to get there. And so we have a sense as faithful people in the Lord that we get contentment from knowing we're on the path and trusting in its destination to be a good one. And so here's a few scriptures. This is 1 Thessalonians, the 5th chapter, and it says in the 16th verse, rejoice evermore. Now, I love this because it's a commandment from God to rejoice evermore. I will admit to you, I'm not living that way. So I have to grow. But my goal is to reach that place where I'm continually rejoicing. What an amazing state to be in, a way to live your life. It says, pray without ceasing, and in everything give thanks, for this is the will of God. It's saying here explicitly, God's will is continual thanksgiving and rejoicing. And you know, again, we're not like wrapping our arms around heaven yet. I don't know what that mansion looks like, but by faith, I can continually rejoice today. I can claim the victory today by aligning myself with that bigger picture, that will that the Lord has for us. And it says in Colossians, this is the 2nd chapter, the 6th verse, as ye have therefore received Christ, Jesus the Lord. And that's the first part. This is a bit of a formula here. You have to receive it. There are many in the world today who refuse the Lord and unknowingly refuse the joy at the same time that he offers. And so they can't find their way to having a thankful heart because they rejected the Lord. And maybe they're not stepping back enough in their life to take stock and realize that's what they're doing. And boy, we need to be fully awake, eyes wide open, and conscious of what we're doing today, because there's so many people in the world today that are blindly making decisions, becoming activists for causes they have no idea about. They don't know the culmination of that. They don't know that when they take up this cause, it has this effect and that effect. And the domino effect is not good today for the causes that people find are important, because they're not thinking far enough ahead. They're thinking, this gets me what I think I want today, but it actually is corrupted, because the plans that the leaders of today and the cultures of today are pursuing, they are not going to end well. I'm telling you. They're going in a darker place. And if you can't see the progression that's happening today, that is continually worse and worse, continually less and less. We don't have grateful people today in the world today, because they're not content, and because they don't understand, and they're not looking at the big picture. That's why we have depression doubled for teens today that we had 20 years ago. What's that about? How are we progressive if that's the result of it? Self-harm among young teen girls is 4 times higher today than it was 10 years ago. This is not good. Why? Well, it's because we're presenting solutions to them to fix their problems that are more harmful than the problems themselves. Change your gender, that'll help you. It's not working. I'm telling you right now, the science does not prove that. What it does is make doctors more profitable. It's not helping the poor girls. Okay? We have to understand God has greater wisdom than the people in the world. And so when we start to open our eyes faithfully to what the word says, it opens our eyes to something else. Well, it says here that if you received Christ, so walk ye in him. That's the second part of the formula. Receive what the word says, and then do it. And then it says, be rooted and built up in him and established in the faith. And as ye have been taught, abounding therein with thanksgiving. That's the will of the Lord, that we would abound in thanksgiving. What a way to be. And I don't think we really know how to get there unless we follow the plan of the Lord. In Chronicles, 1 Chronicles 16, 34, it says, oh, give thanks unto the Lord, for he is good. Now listen to this part. And his mercy endureth forever. Now, maybe I'm off in some of my views. Maybe I don't always say things the right way. Maybe I get too excited at times and carried away. But if you would forgive me for that for just a moment and hear this, I think you'll hear that it's better than anything I have to say. It's the reason why we have gratitude. And despite our many facets, some good, some bad, our human shortcomings, and our, we're trying our best, right, to make sense of a chaotic world today. But what the Lord is saying here is the reason you have room to be filled with gratitude today is because what I offer you lasts forever. Now, I don't know what kind of gift you could receive today that lasts forever. I would be very grateful if I don't know, received wealth and didn't have to go to work anymore. That would be great. If I could spend my days with hobbies instead of toiling, that would be wonderful, but it wouldn't last forever, would it? I don't think we understand the sense of gratitude that we could have by receiving an eternal reward. No wonder we'll spend forever praising God and glorifying him, because it lasts forever. His gift never runs out. He says his mercy endureth forever. It's so wonderful. Couple more for you, and then I'll make way and give you a chance to articulate and express and share what God is doing in your life. But it says here in Hebrews 12:28, wherefore we receiving a kingdom which cannot be moved. Okay, understand again that this kingdom, which is the place in which the mansions we sing about exist, it cannot be moved. Nothing can take it away. You know, in this life, I look at those homes that Doreen had pictures of, and wow, you know, that's opulence, right? But no matter how nice they are, they still need to be maintained. Sometimes that's why they become public properties, because the people who own them can't afford to keep them up. They don't last forever, but the mansions of glory do. He says, let us have grace. Now that's an interesting thing, because when you look up the word grace, even in the Greek original language, it's an interchangeable word with thanksgiving. And so if we understand that we've received a kingdom that cannot be moved, let us have thanksgiving. Now that's an interesting way, I think, to read it, whereby we may serve God acceptably with reverence and godly fear. This is the big picture. It outshines everything else, and it's the proper response to the blessings of God. And so if you want a more thankful heart today, and you know that that's also a lighter heart and a joyful heart, here's the way. It is to understand what God has given you. Because if you understand its worth, you'll have the gratitude that is requisite, that is appropriate to that. One more, and this is Psalms 100, verse 4. It says, enter into his gates. Whose gates? It's the Lord, right? With thanksgiving. So you know what it's like, right? To do something for a loved one and then feel like they didn't appreciate it. Maybe that's a parent experience, right? You do something and the kid doesn't realize what you've really given them, right? We can do that to the Lord. Sometimes we aren't so thankful and appreciative for what he does for us. But he says, enter into the Lord's gates with thanksgiving. That's, again, the proper manner for us to be. And it says, enter into his courts with praise. Be thankful unto him and bless his name. And I would say, you know, there's one more reason to motivate us to do all of this. And here's the why. You know, why does all this matter? We've laid some of it out already, but one more layer to it is that gratitude moves you to do things. Because when you're grateful to someone, you love them back. You try to please them. You sometimes return the favor, right? And so having a thankful heart, maybe as we get into this week and we spend time with our loved ones and we get those turkeys in the oven and we feast, you know, it's kind of born out of this idea of I'm thankful for this great meal and for the harvest, right? But it goes so much deeper than that. If you can go into your Thanksgiving holidays with this mindset, that by being grateful to the Lord, I'm motivated to do things for him and to appreciate the things and what more can we appreciate than each other? You know, that we might have grace for each other, forgiveness, and thankfulness for my brothers and sisters, thankfulness for my family, for the people in my life. And that I might understand that as I accept the things of God and receive his gifts, that I'm thankful for them and thereby motivated to serve him and keep his commandments. And when I do that, guess what happens? The Lord blesses you more and lays upon your gifts, greater gifts and more gifts. And so it never ends. No wonder we praise God forever, because it just compounds upon itself and grows throughout life and into the next, where it really starts to culminate into something that, again, is beyond our wildest dreams. So I don't know about you, but I find these things incredibly exciting, and they drive us to something more, and they deepen our roots in something solid today. And I hope you find yourself anchored in meaningful purpose today that is aligned to God's will and eternity, because that is, well, it can't be outdone, I'll tell you. Nothing the world has can help do that. So may God bless you today.
Take a minute, if I can, or maybe two. We'll see how that goes. Interesting encouragement that Brother Jeremy has given us, and we live in a world, like we talk about every Sunday. It seems like a world that is just continuing to be in turmoil. The ambitions and the desires of what everybody wants out there just are so so different from what the Lord wants. So complicated. I mean, everything you hear is so complicated. I mean, you got to really sit there and study what people are telling you their direction is in their life. I mean, we just went through this midterm election mess. And I don't know today if we're any better off than we were before, considering what everybody was going to promise us and tell us to do and all that. We have to wait and see, I guess. The story will continue to unfold. And all this this righteousness that is being preached to us by the world today. Take my side, take my side. I'm on the right side. I'm on the right side. We get confused. We need Sunday morning to kind of like allow us to just take a deep breath and maybe refocus on the standards of righteousness that the Lord wants us to have. Because when we leave this place and we're succumb to all the influences of the world, I mean, without the foundation that we get on a Sunday morning, the word of the Lord through our Sunday school, through the songs, through the preaching that we get, we will be totally and utterly lost. We need a standard that's firmly planted in the ground that we can hang on to. We talked last week a little bit about those Lehi's dream and the people that were going to that tree of life and how even though the rod of iron was there, they hung on to it. Things took them away. And they drifted off into the midst of darkness. And that's what happens to us all the time too. But that standard of righteousness, that thing that is firmly planted in the ground that will not be blown over by the winds of the world, if you will. And there's some examples here. Moroni teaches us, and King Benjamin teaches us in the Book of Mormon, the way to get planted. It talks about here that, Moroni, he was listening to this guy named Amalickiah, who had a lot of dissensions of the ways of the Lord, if you will, and he was persistent. He was desirous to be king, like what we just went through. So many people desirous to be king or queen or whatever it is to rule us in our ways. It was working for Amalickiah. It says, thus we see how quick the children of men do forget the Lord their God, yea, how quick to do iniquity and so be led away by the evil one. So quick. That's not our intention, but sometimes that becomes the result because we just don't hang on to the right stuff. Well, Moroni got ticked off. This Amalickiah guy was bothering him to no end. And it says here, Moroni was the chief commander of the armies of the Nephites, and he heard the dissensions, and he was angry with Amalickiah. We need to be more angry in our spirit out there. Not so much willing to let the discourses of the world's whims kind of lead us one way or the other in sympathy for somebody's cause. The only cause that we should have is what Moroni says here. It says that Moroni was angry with Amalickiah for leading the people astray. It said it came to pass that he rent his coat, and he took a piece thereof and wore upon it, in memory of our God, our religion, and freedom, and our peace, our wives, and our children, and he fashioned it upon the end of a pole. And he fastened on his headplate, and his breastplate, and his shield, and girded his armor upon his loins, because we need that. Last week, we have spoken about shedding the weight. But in order to go out there to do battle, we got to follow what Moroni did there. He posted this title of liberty, it's called. He took the pole which he had on the end thereof, rent his coat, and he called it the title of liberty. And he bowed himself to the earth, and he prayed mightily unto his God for the blessings of liberty to rest upon his brethren, so long as there should be a band of Christians remain to possess the land. We got to follow Moroni's lead. He took this piece of garment and wrote upon it in memory of our God, our religion, our freedom and our peace, our wives and our children. Those are the standards of righteousness that we've got to go out of this place with and hang on to. And we've got to fasten ourselves with that whole armor of God, because we're going to get shot at. I'll tell you, you will get picked off one by one without this to go out to the world with. That's Satan's way of doing business. And we've all been there. And, unfortunately, it'll happen again. But hopefully, we'll get this reminder of again, where we've been. What was that song that says, I'm not what I want to be. I'm not what I used to be, but something or other. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
I got it all messed up. Thank God I'm not what I was, right?
Yeah.
I'm not what I want to be. I'm not what I'm going to be, but thank God I'm not what I was. We got to keep that in our mind too, because, we will have a tendency to lose the grip of this title of liberty in life. And we will be able to get succumbed by, the whims of the world and the pressure that's out there for us. And it will just kind of overwhelm us. But to Jeremy's point, establishing the standards of righteousness that will keep us firm in the storms of life that are there, and be able to hold fast to what that is. King Benjamin, he talks about it here in Mosiah. He says, I would desire that you consider on the blessed and happy state of those who keep the commandments of God. For behold, they are blessed in all things, both temporal and spiritual. And if they hold out faithful to the end, they are received into heaven. And thereby they may dwell with God in the state of never-ending happiness. Oh, remember that these things are true, for our Lord God has spoken it. Jeremy said those words in different scriptures. The Lord God says it, and our testimonies believe it at times. We've got to kind of hang on. We got to plant that flag of the title of liberty in memory of our God, our religion, our family, of that mansion that's just over the hilltop that we talked about this morning. It's all there for us. But, this is Sunday, right? And Mondays are coming, and we got to get ready for that, and we got to be ready and prepared that when we're not sheltered by, each other, here it's very easy to have that belief and have that faith. Tomorrow morning might be another set of challenges for us. But as Moroni, he got ticked off at Amalickiah. We need to be ticked off at the world out there that's leading us and our children and the whole world astray into this pit of hell that we live in. This is a good life. This is a blessed place. This country was founded on the premises of God's promises. And yet, we, mankind, the ambitious people of the world who have set aside what their goal is in life, have driven it to the point of where it's at today. So we've got to endure to the end. We can endure by planting that title of liberty in the ground and having the right standard of righteousness to follow up on. Because someday, as much as this drives Carrie nuts, it will be our time, to move on. This day is beginning a day of probation for us, to prepare to meet our God. I beat that to death, I know, because I got to work on that. My preparation on some given days is not so good. I don't know. If you're honest with yourself, you answer that question. Could it be better? I think it can. And the Lord sees the desires of our heart. And he looks down upon Brother Walt. He shakes his head and says, not again. Let me help him through this thing again. And thank God that Brother Walt has you and your testimonies. And, the memory is of how God has gotten you through something that the light bulb wakes up on my head and so what am I thinking about? In memory of my God, my religion, my family. The Lord's blessed me tremendously. I get my act together again for a moment. That's the standard of liberty, of the righteousness that we have to plant in the ground in order to be able to endure to the end and enjoy that mansion over the hilltop. enough said today. Joan, you're up.
All right. I'm unmuted, right? You can hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Hold on one second. I'm gonna stop recording.